Ah, the wonderful world of Pokemon. Specifically, Pokemon trading cards. I'm here with, I would indicate, but I'm a cat and I do not apparently have the ability to do this, indicate. So I'll do it with my head. Here is Froakie. He is a 9p card. And yet he brings me a great deal of joy, because most of the Pokemon cards that have ever been released are absolutely beautiful. So we'll have a nice zoom in of his art. He's got lovely kind of foresty scenes in the back, like a woodland scene in the back, like a mountainous woodland, and then it leads into his little kind of pond area, and he's in a little puddle. He's looking happy. He's just a happy little fellow. Now let's get him back to a normal size. He is 9p. This card costs 9p. Now let's look at my other friend, which is PSA Grade 10 Gem Mint Charizard from base set. So yes, there's a slab, there's the card himself. What is the difference between these two cards? Well, let's get them up next to each other and just cover me up for a minute. What's the difference between these two cards? Can you spot it? The difference between these two cards is nostalgia and time, really. They're printed on pretty much the same cardstock. They are printed by the same printers, more than likely. Printing presses are still as unimpressive as ever. More than likely, they are at least related printers to the ones that produced the original base set Charizard. But overall, the biggest difference between them is none of that. It is mostly the fact that there is a nostalgia behind one of them that there isn't behind the other. There is a given value that is beyond what we would think possible for the 9p card. And they are both not particularly rare cards. To get one in really, really mint condition is kind of rare and unusual, especially for a card that is quite old. But 151, as a result of printing a modern version of all of these cards, created a kind of system where it doesn't really matter that these cards are old. In fact, to me, in 151, the Charizard that was in that set, which I don't have to show you, I can only have so many tabs open and not lose control of the quote-unquote program completely. That card was more impressive. It's the Charizard that you know when people think of modern day Pokemon, where he's flying around. He's just jumped off of the mountain and he's flying around looking cute. Looking like a Charizard does. Well, the ultimate problem with this is, this whole situation is, a lot of the value is invented. A lot of the value is nothing to do with the card itself. It is to do with artificial scarcity is one idea some people have, but I think more than likely it is actually a artificial inflation, an artificial nostalgia tax. The idea being that if you walk into any given game store that has a well-stocked Pokemon collection, or if you walk into a trading room or anything like that, that the nostalgia of just seeing that card from your childhood and knowing that it has some intrinsic value validates your existence, validates the time you spent as a Pokemon collector, as a child. Brings back those kind, warm, fuzzy memories that you so wish to return to, as we all do. We all do this kind of thing to actually return, in a way, to a sort of state of more innocence. But you can't do that with a PSA Grade 10 Charizard, can you? Because it robs you of something. And I'm not just coming after this card. This card is a nice card. It's whatever. It's not for me. But it's a nice card. People like it. My problem is it doesn't hold the intrinsic value that people think it does. The price will go up and down based on interest, and that is what people think makes a market. And maybe they're right, I'm not sure. Personally, I've seen the price of cards drop dramatically, go through a bubble period, and then have a long period where things just sort of trail off, and then all of a sudden the card's value goes up as the population of high minty grade cards goes down. Because that is what being in a universe like ours does. It wrecks cards and destroys things that are nice. But let's talk as well about PSA reassessment, because that is a thing that will have to happen more than likely at set times since the date that your card was put into a protective, hermetically sealed card back, whatever they're called, slab, I believe it's called. That process is not permanent, I don't think. I think those cards will continue to deteriorate in the slabs. So then all you're doing really is protecting it against physical damage, but you cannot protect it against the sun, you cannot protect it against cosmic radiation, you cannot protect it against the degradation of cardboard, the potential of moisture ingress into the card. You can't protect it against all of those things. Not really. You can pretend that you can, but it's not reality, is it? So let's actually discuss these things as they are. They are trading cards. They are cards that are designed to be traded. Not sold, not kept as intrinsic measures of value or wealth. And I've heard a lot of arguments that just because baseball cards have such high popularity, Pokemon can do the same. Pokemon should actually do the same. That is the argument I've heard. Well, what's to say that in 10, 15 years' time, the card game even has any value? Pokemon will be around, sure. I'm willing to accept that Pokemon will be around forever. That my great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren will be playing Pokemon just the way that we did, and getting excited about Pikachu and getting, begging their parents for... I can't even imagine a future that far ahead, but they're begging for Pokemon cards just the same. Or maybe they're printing them out on the Space Age 3D printers. Who knows? Ultimately, though, I just don't see a world where the Charizard is worth anything, any of the cards are worth anything, because it is what I would like to call set in nostalgia. In other words, the nostalgia doesn't come from the Pokemon itself, it comes from that specific kind of card, that specific card itself. And by modern measures, as a trading card, it's really bad. As when we look at other cards that actually have playable effects and that you would enjoy, like the 151 version of the Charizard, you start to realize as is kind of obvious if you think about it, there is nothing to do with this game at all that is about the card game. The card game doesn't matter. What matters is nostalgia. The issue is nostalgia dies when people die. Value, or the idea of value, dies when people die. Or when people give up. Which is the first, I guess, form of death of the hobby. When people give up and say, I just don't care anymore, I'm selling up, then all of these cards become niche and become a thing that people are not so interested in. Specifically, the old expensive cards. Magic right now is going through something like that. I don't care if people disagree with me. I'm going to hold these opinions whether people like it or not. If you want to argue, fine, go ahead. That just gets engagement up, makes me feel better. So sure, go ahead and argue. But Magic is going through a similar thing, where Magic doesn't have any interest in the older stuff. But I would argue Magic is a much, much older game and a much more mature game in one sense, because Magic for many years wasn't spamming out sets. It wasn't trying to copy the Pokemon model. It wasn't trying to be something that it is trying to be now. But the Pokemon card game really didn't get to do that. It seems to me, in terms of a timeline, it has only just reached adulthood. So that's why we can get things like this guy being worth ridiculous amounts of money, and we can get stuff like this guy, who's in front of me, being worth nothing. Now, there is also the actual practical aspect of the game as well. The fact that, yes, this is kind of a bad starter Pokemon, it's a bad version of Froakie and all of that. But again, it's not about the card game itself, and people need to break away the card game from the collectible aspect. The collectible aspect has completely overshadowed the actual play aspect of the game, because there is really no reason to play the card game for most people. They're not interested. It's nerd shit to them. But there is a reason to collect these cards. And it isn't for nostalgia, and it isn't for the sake of having a binder of joy as I have, and I will talk about it in a little while. I'll even show you my binder of joy if you like. I swear that isn't a euphemism. I will show you it because everything in it is absolutely worthless, and the thing is, it's just one of those things where collecting for me, it doesn't make sense when there is this much money in it. And there is obviously intrinsic nostalgic value behind these cards, behind a lot of them anyway, but not £35,000 worth of intrinsic value and nostalgia. In other words, regardless of what other people, what other investors, what anybody who has anything to say about this at all wants to say about it, this is giving me a huge bubble vibe. Yes, we can say, oh, there is huge amounts of value within these cards, and there is an interest in these cards, and we can just cope and just say that is what is happening right now. But it isn't. Now, here's another thing that I want to talk about as well. From the seller perspective, I sell or have sold near mint or mint PSA style cards, like cards that are high grade, to people who will inevitably get them slabbed and will probably make a hell of a lot of money from it. But here's the thing, the cards I sold weren't that old. 10, 15 years old, some of them. They weren't worth the money that they paid for them. I just followed the market, and the market said it was worth X, Y, and Z. And I didn't overcharge and I didn't undercharge. So I put it up for bid. I had a minimum bid allowed, and I sold the cards. None of those cards sold for PSA grade 10 Charizard, blah blah blah. You know, brand new from the factory. We travelled into a time machine and took the card off the production line. Like, no, none of that. None of them sold for anywhere near that, but did sell for reasonable money. So when you look at the situation, you think, well, okay, so we've got huge different pricing categories of cards, availability points, we've got different areas. From that perspective, we see that actually, when you think about things, everything is leaning, like the whole structure of the cards themselves, like the whole structure of the card market itself for Pokemon is leaning on the PSA grade 10 Charizard as the most expensive card, massively hyped, massively inflated by the Paul brothers and by all of the other people just like them. You know, this card on its own is holding up 1/10 of the market, I would argue, if not more, at least of the secondary to into tertiary market. This card is holding it all up. Now, you can argue with Magic that 1/10 of the market is being held up by Black Lotus, but that's not true anymore. In fact, Magic 30 proved that that isn't true. There is a huge amount of backlash against Magic 30, and then the old cards that are in the reserved list are no longer interesting to people, and they just focus entirely on the new shit. As a result, you get a kind of double market where one side of things doesn't care at all about old cards. The other side of things cares only about old cards and the nostalgia and making a cube, if they're playing at all. It doesn't strike me that Pokemon's going to do that, but it's splitting into different parts in a different way. Because, again, this card's holding it all up, and cards like it. PSA 10, Charizard. People are treating it like it's the Holy Grail. Which is funny because even Sorcery Contested Realms' actual Holy Grail is not worth anywhere near what this card is worth, and it has better art, and it is neater, and all of that. So, this was some perspective. This is a card game, and I don't just mean the trading card game that we battle each other with monsters. This is a game as well. People are playing with lots and lots of money, with ridiculous amounts of money. And when they do this, when they continuously throw money into the game and hope that something comes out of it, hope that money comes out of it, whether it's sealed product, whether it's, single cards, whether it's whatever, you will eventually get burnt. You will eventually get to the point where you are throwing so much more money than you can afford that you literally cannot afford to do anything. And I've seen it happen. I've seen people who are trying their very best to invest in this game as if it were just a sort of a stock or a bond or something like that. And I've been tempted down that thinking too. But I'm not immune to this, because I see the amount of value that's on the table, and I get tempted, and I think, well, I could, if I potentially bought this, I could keep it sealed, keep it in a hermetically sealed container, you know, get my cards graded, get this sorted, get that. Even Yu-Gi-Oh cards, I thought, well, there's some value in Yu-Gi-Oh cards, maybe I can get that sorted, like get some of them graded, get them, you know, I know some of them are really highly graded, so get them graded and get a bit of inherent value behind the cards. But I think as a primary investment, that is a really bad idea. And looking at the way that the market is right now, looking at the fact that, again, I will not stop pointing this out, this card is propping it all up. Whereas these cards, nobody cares about these cards. Nobody talks about these cards. They're in a big, massive bulk, and they are most of what you will open up in a booster pack. Remember that. If you take nothing else away from this, take away the reality of what a booster pack is. There is no value in a booster pack except for the last card or the last two cards, depending on which booster pack it is and which order they're in and all of that kind of thing. Most of it is bulk common. Most of it is low grade, uninteresting, boring crap, essentially. So let's reality check. This is a card game that's being propped up by a single card, and the idea that there is value inherent in this entire card game is sort of true and also, in a sense, laughable. And what happens eventually when you keep pushing this? You know, there's money in the game. There's money in the game. Trust me. Put more money in the game. Pour more money in the game. Buy more single cards. You know, when you push this narrative, and so many YouTubers push this narrative, how to triple your cards by buying this card from this person and selling upwards, and you don't have to spend a penny, and all of these kind of get-rich-quick schemes. Like, it doesn't work. People just need to realize that they are being manipulated, and that the game doesn't even matter at this point. But the game of trading around these pieces of cardboard for ridiculous amounts of money, yeah, that's very much so still going. And it's all hollow. Like a bubble. Who'd have thunk? Anyway. That's all I have to say. Just remember, it's a card game. It's not an investment opportunity. It can be both. Just don't ruin your life over it. Like, just don't do it. This game is just silly. It's silly creatures. And again, as I will keep saying, when the print facility comes online, probably next year, could potentially be the year after, we'll all look very silly when we're kind of pushing a lot of these newer cards and saying that they are, you know, pristine, grade A, 10, whatever, gem mint. That won't matter when there's 1,000 of them on the market. Thanks for listening.